If you think this Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade situation can't get any more drawn out and ridiculous, well, think again. Sam Amick of The Athletic reported the latest offer from the Sacramento Kings, which in my opinion is more than fair and reasonable. And yet, be it because of ego or unrealistic hope for the future, the Warriors are still not willing to play ball. It might just be time for the Sacramento Kings to walk away. You're listening to Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all offseason long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I have been chomping at the bit all day to finally come up with the time to record this podcast because I got plenty to say about the latest developments in this Jonathan Kuminga saga. And I understand that a lot of this audience, whether it's Kings fans or, yes, I know Warrior fans you're listening to. Hi, welcome back. Good to see you. I know there's fatigue with this whole conversation. Can we move on? Can we talk about something else? Well, it very well might be that time because Sam Amick of The Athletic released an article today with the latest on the Jonathan Kuminga situation and the offers that are on the table. And he shared that the latest offer from the Sacramento Kings was Malik Monk and a 2030 lottery protected draft pick, which if that 2030 draft pick did not convey, meaning if the Sacramento Kings were a lottery team in 2030, then the Warriors would receive the worst of the Sacramento Kings or San Antonio Spurs first round draft picks in 2031. Remember, the Kings and Spurs have a pick swap that year because of the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade deal that the Kings executed a little over a year ago. The Spurs get the better of those two picks. So if the Kings are a worse team than the Spurs, well, the Spurs get the Kings pick and the Kings get the Spurs pick. Well, in this case, the Spurs would get the Kings pick and the Warriors would get the Spurs pick if this deal were to go through, if the Warriors were to accept this deal and the 2030 first round pick were to not convey. So essentially, the Warriors in this offer are guaranteed a first round pick. What is not guaranteed is where that first round pick will end up in 2031. Now, if we're forecasting going forward, we're probably hoping in 2031 that the Sacramento Kings are a good basketball team. And I think the expectation will be, assuming Victor Wembanyama is still a San Antonio Spur, that the Spurs will be a really good team in 2031. But of course, there's the chance that the Kings aren't any good. The Spurs maybe aren't any good. Maybe it's a down year for them. Maybe Victor Wembanyama has left to go to a bigger market. A lot can change over the 5-6 years between now and the time that that pick would convey. So the offer is Malik Monk, a sixth man of the year candidate, and a guaranteed first round pick either in 2030 or 2031. That is on the table. And still, the Warriors are saying no. Here's my thing. The Warriors can't possibly expect better than this right now. And it's because of their circumstance. That is the point that I'm going to continue to hammer home, and I've been hammering home for the last month. The Kings and every other team in the NBA is aware of the circumstance that the Warriors are in, with Kuminga not wanting to play there, the Warriors not viewing Kuminga as part of their long-term plan, and at best, the Warriors are viewing Kuminga as like a $20 million salary slot that they could potentially use at this upcoming trade deadline to trade for another star to add to their last chance Golden State Warriors Steph Curry dynasty title shot. Like that is what the Warriors are doing. Everyone in the league knows it. And the Kings even have a further leg up on that because they've met with Kuminga. They have a good understanding with Kuminga. Kuminga wants to play for the Sacramento Kings. Kuminga and the Kings have already, it sounds like, agreed upon a dollar figure, and I'll share that with you because Sam Amick had that in his article. I'll share that, what that number figure is for you later on in the podcast. But focusing on the Warriors situation, everybody knows where the Warriors are at, the circumstance the Warriors are in, not to mention they're hovering around first apron salary cap territory. Their circumstance is not a very strong position of power, even if they have the cards or the final say, which of course they do. They have the leverage. They are not in the best position to just say, okay, we'll just keep Kuminga and figure it out later. And that might end up being their plan, and they might view that as their best case scenario. Well, if that's the case, well, fine. My point all along has been then the Kings should just let them explore that and wish them the best of luck and move on to the next thing. Asking for an unprotected first-round pick, which is what the Warriors essentially countered this offer with, to me is absurd. It's unreasonable. It's borderline not negotiating in good faith. The Warriors can't reasonably believe that the Kings, knowing Golden State's circumstance, would be willing to include an unprotected first-round pick in this deal with Malik Monk, who, regardless of contract situation, is a valuable player and a piece that makes more sense for the Golden State Warriors maximizing their on-the-court title hopes right now than Jonathan Kuminga does, considering Kuminga is checked out and the Warriors don't view Kuminga as part of a good fit for a title window going forward. Again, the Kings know this. Malik Monk, out of Monk, Saric, and Carter, of course, is the best of the three players and someone that I think makes a lot of sense to help the Golden State Warriors get back into the playoffs and make a deeper run than they were able to the last couple of years. Is Malik Monk the difference between the Warriors winning or losing a title? No, not necessarily, but Jonathan Kuminga isn't the difference between the Kings being in the title picture or not either. So I don't know if this is an ego thing. I know Joe Lacob absolutely loves Kuminga and is a big supporter and believer of Kuminga, and maybe he wants to be right in this entire circumstance. Maybe the Warriors want to save face in a way. They don't want to be fleeced. They don't want to move on from Jonathan Kuminga only for him to become a star in a couple of years because a team was able to give him the opportunity the Warriors were not able to give him. I don't know. But the Warriors cannot realistically think that demanding a unprotected first-round pick as part of this trade package is reasonable. It's not. And I want to address something really quick because since all this information has come out and I've responded to it on social media, I've seen whether it's Warriors Twitter accounts or Warriors fans responding to me, and some of you listening might feel this way and might have already commented this in the comment section. Matt, you've said that the Warriors can't expect better before when they had the Dario Saric and Devin Carter offer. It sure seems to me like the Warriors strategy is working because now all of a sudden the offer has been up to Malik Monk, a better player, and a lottery-protected first-round pick. All right, let me talk about that for a little bit because I think you're over-exaggerating a very minor win. Let me remind you that when I first started reporting all of this at the very beginning of July, when all of this started coming out, and I was one of the first people to put it out there, I shared with you at that time that Malik Monk was on the table, that the Kings had offered Malik Monk in these negotiations, and the Warriors were not interested in Malik, mostly because of his contract situation. The win, if you want to celebrate it, the win is going from the initial offer of a second-round draft pick to a lottery-protected first. However, basic negotiation 101, if you start your offer at second-round pick and then counter with a protected first, that's a completely reasonable path for negotiations to go, especially when these negotiations have been dragged out over almost an entire month at this point. But going from lottery protected first, which by the way is further than I would go. I personally said that I wouldn't have gone beyond like a heavily protected first that most likely conveys into multiple second rounders down the road. That's as far as I personally would have went. The Kings are willing to go a little bit farther than that. Again, Warriors fans, if you want to celebrate that, hey, go for it. But I think even Warriors fans can acknowledge that asking for an unprotected first-round pick in this circumstance is not realistic. Again, to me, it's borderline negotiating not in good faith, or that the Warriors realistically don't expect or don't want to get a deal with the Sacramento Kings done, which may be the circumstance. And if that's the case, then let's all just move on and stop talking about this nonsense, which I'm going to get to that more in just a little bit. And I see also people saying, well, Matt, Sam Amick mentioned in the article, if the Warriors go and trade for Malik Monk, well, his salary situation, that's going to put them over the first apron. And then they're going to have to get rid of like Moses Moody or Buddy Hield or both of them in order to get back under the apron. Hey, guess what? If you sign, you being the Warriors, sign Jonathan Kuminga to the contract offers that you were offering or making available to Jonathan, it's going to put you over that first apron anyway. Your financial circumstance is a mess that you made that the Sacramento Kings or any other team negotiating with you is not obligated to get you out from underneath. If you don't want to take on Malik Monk's contract, guess what? There's a lot of other teams, in fact, pretty much every other team around the league that feels the same way right now about Malik Monk. I don't necessarily blame you for that, but that's where the cheaper asset of Devin Carter, who is a young lottery pick from last year that I think the Warriors could mold into something, plus a guaranteed first-round pick in either 2030 or 2031. There's that offer too. But if that one isn't good enough for you because Dario Saric is not a good enough player, then what are we doing here? We're just wasting our time. And again, it feels like we've gotten to this point where the Warriors really don't want to get a deal done. The only way the Warriors will get a deal done is if they manage to get the Kings and Scott Perry to fold to an unreasonable demand, like an unrestricted first-round pick. So what should the Sacramento Kings do from here? I'm going to share my thoughts on that, plus the details on what the Sacramento Kings offered for Kuminga in terms of a contract that's all still coming here on Locked On Kings. Like I said at the top of the show, this episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, long it on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of shopping for tickets. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endlessly scrolling through tickets for an event that you want to go to, hunting for the right deals in the areas that you want to sit at the right price range for you, Game Time simplifies the process with their zone deals that gives you the best seats in the section that you want and shows you the best deals right away. And if you want to know what your view is going to look like, maybe you're going to a venue that you've never been to before, or maybe you're going to one of those massive stadium concerts where you don't know how big the stage or how far up you're going to be and what the view is actually going to be from your seat. Well, the panoramic seat views on Game Time are better than you are going to find anywhere else. Plus, with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There are no hidden fees. And if you're worried about what happens when plans change, hey, life happens. The Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. If you ask me, and you may not have, but sorry, this is my podcast, so I'm going to blabber about it. The Sacramento Kings have gone far enough. Again, they've gone further than I would feel comfortable going if I were Scott Perry and the Sacramento Kings. I understand the appeal of Kuminga. I understand the opportunity that acquiring Kuminga presents, not just because these opportunities don't come around very often, but because of the fact that you could add a piece that the Kings can start to build towards their future right now, even amongst having some contracts like Zach LaVine's, for example, that Perry may not necessarily be happy about and may just be trying to ride out before he can really focus on executing his plan and focusing on the future. Kuminga gives the Kings a start to build their new core right away. I understand all of that. To me, Jonathan Kuminga is not worth this headache anymore. Jonathan Kuminga is not worth bowing to the whims of the Warriors. And I'm not just saying that because I view the Warriors as big brother. And look, Warriors fans, we have a lot of fun going back and forth, especially going back to the playoff series. Had a lot of fun smack talking. Understand this. The respect that I have for the Golden State Warriors organization is tenfold, right? Not only do I think the Golden State Warriors have been one of the greatest teams, especially recently, in the NBA, I think they're one of the best organizations in professional sports. Genuinely, I think that. So understand when I'm saying the Warriors are not worth this headache and it's not worth bowing to what the Warriors are asking for. It's not from a place of spite and bitterness and anger towards the Golden State Warriors organization. It's that the Sacramento Kings are hopefully, with Scott Perry's leadership, beyond a place of being taken advantage of by anybody in the league. I do think the Warriors are being unreasonable in these negotiations. I don't think the Warriors are negotiating to actually get a deal done. I think they're pretty much stringing the Kings along because ultimately they view that they will have better options or more options next season at the trade deadline or even beyond that. Hey, it's a very similar situation to what I wanted the Sacramento Kings to do with De'Aaron Fox. I wanted the Sacramento Kings to not trade Fox at the deadline and wait till this offseason for Scott Perry to make a decision on that. So I understand that Warriors' point of view completely. What I'm saying is in these circumstances, an unrestricted first-round pick plus Malik Monk or Devin Carter is way too much to give up for Kuminga because of the Warriors' circumstance. That is the point here. Allowing the Warriors to get out from underneath the tough position that they are in by gifting them a first-round pick, in addition to a player that might not be part of the long-term future in Sacramento, but make no mistake about it, Malik Monk is one of the more important players on this Kings roster. That is just a fact, even if Scott Perry doesn't view him as part of the long-term plan. The Kings cannot and should not make that deal. They've made their best offer. If the Warriors are not willing to play ball, walk away. Just walk away. If the Warriors want to try and do better, If the Warriors want to sign Kuminga, go over the first apron anyway and deal with the circumstances or ramifications or try and dump other salary or hope for something better at the trade deadline or hope to not lose him in free agency, unrestricted free agency next year if they sign him to the qualifying offer or whatever. If that's the case, so be it. Let them try and figure it out. And you can still wait in the wings. You can still make an offer at the trade deadline if you want to. You can, if Kuminga becomes an unrestricted free agent, you can try and free up the money to take the Warriors out of the conversation completely and just negotiate with Kuminga, who again wants to play for you. Feel free. Go that route. That, to me, is better than giving up this unrestricted first-round pick plus Malik Monk to get this deal across the finish line. And I hope to God Scott Perry and the Sacramento Kings hold to that standard. I would be, even with Kuminga becoming a Sacramento King, I'm telling you on this Locked On Kings podcast, if the Kings agreed to that deal and settled and gave the Warriors what they wanted there with an unrestricted or unprotected first-round pick, I'm telling you, I'm not going to be a happy camper on this podcast. Not that the Kings are making decisions based off of what Matt George wants, but to me, that is another signal that the Sacramento Kings allowed themselves to get taken advantage of. Move past that. There are going to be other opportunities. The Kings are not a Jonathan Kuminga away from making a massive difference in the West. Time is on the Kings' side, even if the next couple of seasons are not the most appealing for Kings fans and for me right now. This is not the time to overpay. And I'd argue that the Kings with Malik Monk and a lottery protected first are already borderline overpaying for Kuminga given the Warriors' circumstance. If the Warriors and Kuminga were in the same kind of position as the Kings and Keegan Murray are right now, meaning Kuminga plays an important part, hasn't perfectly worked out, but the Warriors would be interested in bringing Kuminga back. And now the Sacramento Kings are trying to pluck him away. Yes, you best believe you better be paying at least an unprotected first-round pick. That circumstance is completely different, and therefore the conversation would be completely different. But that's not the circumstance of the Golden State Warriors. The Sacramento Kings know it, and the Kings would be fools not to try and exploit that as much as they possibly can. And if they cannot do so effectively, walk away before folding and giving in to what the Warriors are asking for. That's my thoughts on the situation. This probably, if this deal is a no, and the Warriors, unless the Warriors come back and revisit this deal specifically, like these conversations should be over. They should be over, and both sides should just move on. But part of this article from Sam Amick was details on the number that the Kings offered Jonathan Kuminga. Apparently, it's a 3-year, $63 million deal, so essentially $21 million a year. I thought that was interesting because a 3-year deal instead of a 4-year deal, well, Jonathan Kuminga is talking a lot about, and he put out on Instagram, betting on himself, right? Think about if the Kings were to sign Kuminga to this deal, if all this trade, all this stuff were to go through. Jonathan Kuminga spends the next 3 years, 2 of which are probably going to be with LaVine, all 3 of which are going to be with Sabonis. And let's say Kuminga over that time, with the green light and with the opportunity that the Sacramento Kings present, turns into the star or all-star that he feels he has the potential of becoming, or he feels he will become, and it's the Warriors that are holding him back from. Well, then in 3 years, my friend, you're getting a lot more than $21 million a year. So the Kings are offering him a deal that short-term pays him less than what he wants, but opens the door for, after 3 years, that payday could come from the Kings or another team if you are reaching that all-star potential. I also think that number is interesting in regards to Keegan Murray's contract, right? Because we have this offer that the Kings are putting on the table for Kuminga, who does have a higher ceiling in terms of being an all-star than Keegan Murray does. I love Keegan. You know I love Keegan, but I can recognize that Kuminga as an offensive player and a gifted offensive scorer and athlete has more upside, star power upside than Keegan, who's a really good shooter, a good rebounder, a really good defender, but limited in terms of a shot creator does. Does that mean Keegan is, from the Kings, going to get an offer of around the same? A little bit less? Can Keegan and his camp expect or ask for a little bit more than that? You also have to factor in the Jabari Smith Jr. deal that the Rockets gave Jabari earlier this offseason. That's going to be really interesting to keep in the back of our mind when we start looking at and talking about Keegan Murray's contract extensions and negotiations. And that number that the Kings are offering is also fairly significantly less than the number that Shams talked about, around the $90 million per year or $90 million total over 4 years, I think it was, that the Phoenix Suns were putting on the table for Kuminga. Well, I want to talk about the Phoenix Suns and what Sam Amick had to say about the Phoenix Suns offer. And I also want to talk about one more thing regarding this Kuminga deal. If the Kings weren't in the West, would this deal already be done? That's all still coming here on Locked On Kings. We've known for maybe a week, a little over a week, thanks to Shams from ESPN, that the Warriors really only have two concrete offers on the table. There's interest in Kuminga around the league, but realistically, there's only two concrete sign and trade offers on the table for the Golden State Warriors. It was one from the Suns and one from the Kings. Well, obviously, the Kings and the Warriors have been negotiating, and the deal has changed or been adjusted slightly. The Suns, it's been reported, a deal of like Royce O'Neal, filler, and like 6 second-round picks or something like that. According to Sam Amick, the Suns deal is not even being considered. Like the Suns are not a threat to the Sacramento Kings in these conversations. The Kings are not in a bidding war with the Suns to try and present the best offer to the Warriors in order to get this deal done. The Kings are negotiating with themselves, essentially. Any improvement that the Kings make on their offer is simply to meet the Warriors, again, unrealistically high standards compared to, we got to offer more to beat out a potential Phoenix Suns offer. So take the Phoenix Suns out of this conversation. They're not in the running. It's the Kings versus the Warriors, and Kuminga is the third part of the love triangle that's over here going, I want them, I don't want you, but you have control over it, but you don't maximize me, and I know you don't really want me here. I'm just a salary slot to you. Like, it's like you could make like a high school or junior high rom-com about these negotiations. Maybe that's something like Bleacher Report will do to add to their Game of Zones thing that they do. But I am curious, and I don't know how much of a factor this plays in, but I think it like, where a player is traded to, where that player goes, always carries some sort of weight in these negotiations. If the Sacramento Kings were an Eastern Conference team, would the Warriors have been, or would they be more willing to play ball? I'm not saying the Golden State Warriors are afraid of the Sacramento Kings. Warriors fans understand that's not what I mean. But I do think if the Warriors do have a fear of Kuminga becoming the star elsewhere, and they traded him for a bag of peanuts or not enough in their mind, and he goes on to have a great career and they have to deal with that and the shame of that in years to come, or Joe Lacob has that fear, then I imagine having to face the guy 4 times and sending him to a team that's not just in the Western Conference with you, that's in your division. Not that the divisions matter very much in the NBA, but you know you're going to be playing Jonathan Kuminga, if he were a Sacramento King, 4 times a year. And if he realizes his potential an hour and a half down I-80 or up I-80, then I imagine that would sting a little bit more for Joe Lacob and the Golden State Warriors versus if you send him out east, if the Kings are in Cleveland and they're making this offer for Kuminga and you only have to face him twice a year, and after that you can kind of just move on and not really think about it. And again, the Golden State Warriors should be operating fully with doing what they can right now to maximize their Steph Curry title window. They've been consistent with that so far. They should remain consistent with that. If they keep Jonathan Kuminga going into next season, they have to deal with the distractions of it and the annoyance of it until they move on from him or a resolution is reached. So if they want to take that on, be my guest. But I wonder if the Kings were out east and they could just send Kuminga to another conference and just go, we're moving on from it, and we only have to see him 2 times a year. I wonder if that would be easier for them to do than sending Kuminga, again, just an hour and a half away to a rival. I use air quotes because there's not much of a Kings-Warriors rivalry beyond their neighbors in Northern California. I think that plays a little bit of a factor, whether the Warriors or Kings want to admit it or not. But all right, you've heard my circumstance. To me, part of me genuinely hopes this is the last time we talk about this. There's nowhere to go from here. If the Warriors genuinely don't want to play ball, okay. Kings, let them go and figure it out. Wish them the best of luck and move on. And even if you have nothing to move on to right now, whether Russell Westbrook signing is possible or not, and you have to just go into the next season with this roster as constructed, that to me is a way better route than bowing to the Warriors and giving them an unprotected first-round pick as part of this deal. Let the Warriors figure it out, run the risk of waiting to get Kuminga at the trade deadline or waiting to get him in unrestricted free agency next year if he signs a qualifying offer. And if the Warriors and Kuminga are able to work something out or another team swoops in February and offers more, bummer, so be it. It's not the end of the world for the Kings. That's where I'm at. I'm wondering how you feel about it. Let me know. At MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. And feel free to comment in the YouTube comment section down below. Warriors fans already know there's going to be a bunch of you in that YouTube comment section down below. First off, again, I appreciate you for listening, even if you're here to gloat and act arrogant and pompous. I guess you've earned that right because of how good your team and organization has been over the last 10 years. That's fine. If you don't want to admit that your team is being unreasonable with demanding a unprotected first-round pick, that's your prerogative. You can feel however you want to feel about it. Ultimately, the Sacramento Kings can walk away from this problem and move on. They still have their own problems, don't get me wrong, but they are not, and I repeat, they are not a Jonathan Kuminga away from figuring everything out. The pressure is on the Golden State Warriors to get back into the title picture. They're running out of time. They're against the clock when it comes to Steph Curry, and they have to deal with the distraction and the mess that this entire Jonathan Kuminga saga has presented that organization. So, fine. You can gloat about it if you want to. I, for one, while I'm probably not enjoying watching a lot of Sacramento Kings basketball next year, will enjoy watching how that saga in Golden State plays out. And I hope you have enjoyed, you Warriors fans, Kings fans, whoever have enjoyed listening and watching this podcast. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.